Hello, Kriegspiel players. We're going to talk about the raid on Chillicothe, which is part of the Fractured States universe. And this is a decisions and outcomes briefing, so it's not a battle report scene by scene, but we're talking about the specific decisions that the players made. There were great raids during the calamity that ended the United States and the Confederate States. The Beefsteak Raid, the Magnolia Station Train Raid, and Shelby's raid, all very famous. There's an entire list of great raids of the era, and the raid on Chillicothe is not on that list. It was not that great of a raid. Let's talk about the world a little bit. The Fractured States players were going to Chillicothe, where the purple arrow shows you, is part of Ohio, which is the middle part of the country, and the New Society has set up shop there in Ohio, and Chillicothe is one of their main trading cities. The team that went was commanded by General Haygood. His sidekick and scout was Ranger. You see here 7 different detachments all were available for the raid. Now the reason the raid was even created was because many of the players that you see on the screen here were presenting to Umpire LaFondios that they wanted to be special forces, they wanted to be snipers, they wanted to snoop and poop, and they wanted to do all sorts of very high-end type operations with their troops. So I gave them what these types of forces do, and that's a raid. The New Society was the owners of Chillicothe, and Colonel Cox was played by Great Gold, who was a guest commander who did a great job, and he commanded the security forces. And the security forces that you see down in the bottom left-hand corner were former Calamity soldiers and some new recruits, of course. Very skilled, very disciplined, going to be a tough nut to crack. Definitely not a group that you want to go straight up against in a fight. The mission was to rescue Cleopatra Culpepper, the daughter of an industrialist who Hampton knew. Hampton is Haygood's employer, and they had to go and quote-unquote rescue Cleopatra Culpepper. But what the team didn't know is that Cleopatra actually is a bit rough for wear. She's really kind of trying on the New Society. And in fact, the New Society is exactly as advertised. It's an egalitarian society where anyone from the outside can come and just learn their ways. She came in with her, shall we say, uppity ways and was treating people like servants. And part of the backstory here and part of the strategy is that Cox would have gladly given her up because she was not very nice. So the problems that the raid command had was as follows. In the upper left-hand corner where the star is, that's where Cleopatra was being housed. So that's number one. The second one is that there was really only one land bridge. It was a railroad bridge into the city of Chillicothe. So everything else was by boat. So when you had a large force of 7 detachments, you're not going to easily get them across on boats. So that bridge was very important. The third was that there was 30 wagons of treasure down in the warehouse south of the town that the group could have taken advantage of rather than rescue Cleopatra. And the fourth was that really the only way out was the rail line because the security forces would be able to catch up with them, and there was no way they were going to eliminate all the security forces in the city, so they couldn't walk or ride out. They had to actually take the train out. So an operation, the only way to have it be successful was to move from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. The defense created by Colonel Cox was very well constructed and scarily efficient. There were a cavalry and guard screen all around the city, pushed well out, so Cox would be warned when anybody came into the area. His plan was to move all of the people and the treasure deep inside where the 2 stars are. So the gold was going to be in a warehouse, and then the people would be up in the northwest. He had a regular troop force, which had access to the railroad, and an elite troop force, which he hid in the camp, which was actually a schoolhouse. And he rigged the bridge. So where the yellow circle is with the red outline, he actually rigged the bridge to be blown. So this was a very capable defense, and it was going to be a very tough nut to crack as it is. So the decision number one was Haygood's plan and the way he was going to approach it. He he really had a very straightforward plan, and that was to march west. But let's go ahead and hear from Haygood and what his plan was.
We send the infantry, cannons, and about one-third of cavalry to rescue the hostages. Another one-third of the cavalry will raid the warehouses if it's not too heavily guarded, and the rest of the cavalry will be on lookout and act as reserves. Once we get the loot and the prisoners, we head back into the mountains.
So as you hear that plan, you probably noticed that there's a couple of details that were missing from the plan. The identity of the target was never shared with anybody, so nobody actually knew who they were rescuing. He had that in a satchel that he'd been given prior to the mission. Nobody had any maps, so they had a planning session where the map on the left was actually shared in the planning string, but nobody made the point of, hey guys, copy this map. So during the mission, everyone was trying to share maps. And that was probably a bad time to share it because it was a night mission. There was really no coordination, so nobody knew what to do. So what resulted was the map on the right, which is where everyone just started kind of trying to figure out which road they were going to take, and all that could have been planned out ahead of time. And the escape was never really talked about other than march into the mountains, and that probably wasn't thought through as much. So anyway, so the plan was thin, and you'll see the results here in a sec. So decision number two was William. William was a new member of the group. Did a great job, actually. He marched up the road with vigor, and when he encountered Cox's cavalry, who was commanded by Cox himself, he fought. He just hung in there, fought, rotated his troops out, and actually, though financially William didn't do well on this, I think he actually did a pretty good job of commanding the troops, probably one of the better performances relative to staying on mission. Decision number three was that Wilkins attacks Doomson. Now, in order to understand this, you have to go back to earlier missions where Doomson worked for Wilkins, and they had a disagreement, and Doomson took some of the men and the treasure, and ever since then, there's been a little, shall we say, a rivalry. And Wilkins decided early on, he heard firing in the hills, and he decided, well, we've been discovered, so I'll go ahead and attack my rivals. So this was the raiding force attacking the raiding force. On the left, you see a screen of Wilkins, what Wilkins saw, and on the right, this is what Doomson saw. Now, Wachtmeister, who's another character, joined Wilkins because they have an alliance, and so Doomson really was doomed. There was no way he could have hung in there because he was outnumbered almost 2-1 and was caught by surprise. So he was overwhelmed, and he had a chance to escape, and he almost made it, but he had a run of bad luck, and he was captured. So Doomson ended up being brought back to heel. So decision number four was actually brilliant. The only player who got out of this with more money than he came in with was Wolf. So those of you who played Fractured States or know Fractured States know that wagons are money. And so Wolf came to the party with one wagon. He was pretty clear early on that the internal rivalries were going to cause a problem. And the yellow circles you see in the map on the left, the activity was poor William was left unsupported on his own, being attacked by Cox. The circle on the right was where Doomson was being attacked, and we had the majority of the force fighting each other. And Wolf grabbed an unaligned wagon extra and headed east. So in financial terms, Wolf actually didn't have a bad mission. Number five is a player named Ranger. Despite the mission really falling apart, Ranger pushed on. So he stole some uniforms from some dead enemy soldiers. He actually lucked out and avoided the gunboat. And the reason you see two counters here is he had his adopted son Dougal with him, and his adopted son is a scarily capable sniper who is able to move with utter silence. The only problem is that Dougal has bad eyesight, so his aim is not so good. So yeah, he avoids the gunboat. It was very lucky there. He makes his way to the camp where he thinks the target is, And the adopted son Dougal asks him, "Who were we rescuing?" And at that point, he, I think, realizes that he doesn't know because he was never briefed. So this was decision number 5. He ends up walking up to the camp, was taken prisoner and interrogated as part of the end of that part of the mission. Finally, the genius move, in my opinion, and I know I'm not supposed to give opinions on these decision briefs, but this was pretty genius. The mission was in bad shape. Colonel Cox had everyone surrounded. He had captured Ranger. He had surrounded another force that I haven't even talked about. And Wilkins decides to go, and they go into a grand co-location, and he decides to trade Doomson to Cox for safe passage out. And Cox basically says, "You all I want you all to do is get out of my territory," and that's how the scenario ended. So actually, Wilkins, instead of everyone getting into some sort of battle that would have ended up with a lot more casualties and even some player deaths, Wilkins pulled a rabbit out of the hat on that one, and he became the person who essentially kept all the players from getting killed in the end. So though the players lost all their money, they survived. So here was the layout of the objectives. Colonel Cox's objective, played by Great Gold, was to keep Chillicothe, the treasure, and the people who have come to the new society safe, and he accomplished that objective. In fact, to the point of capturing almost the entire raiding party. General Haygood did not achieve his objectives because the mission that he was given Hampton did not go well. Ranger ended up getting captured. Jorgensen's got captured, although he was allowed safe passage out for giving up all of his money and his weapons. Walkmeister was right on the edge. I almost gave him a neutral in that he didn't lose any men, he didn't lose any money really, but he didn't achieve the objective. So though he has a red X, his was as close to neutral as possible. Wilkins lost a lot of treasure. Wolfe actually snuck out with extra treasure, which was a pretty smart move. Poor William actually fought the good fight, was wounded, and sadly didn't achieve his objectives, but he was a great first showing for a new player, so it was great to have him. Poor Doomson got caught by surprise there, and it didn't turn out very well for him. And Blunt actually didn't lose a lot of men. He lost some treasure and was captured in the end, but he played a pretty good game. So that's how it laid out. So it is possible in the fractured states for pretty much everyone to lose except 1 or 2 people in a scenario. You see it here on the screen. Thanks so much for listening to the decision brief for the fractured states. And here is one thing that is absolutely true. If in the fractured states you say you want to be a paratrooper, or you want to be a special forces operator, or you want to invent a steampunk tank, you better really know how to use it, because I'm going to give it to you. When I put you in a scenario, it's going to test you. And I hope you enjoyed your raid, Fractured States players. And I hope if you're not a Fractured States players, this is interesting enough to you that you might come and give it a shot sometime. We always actually have a lot of laughs and a lot of fun in the games. Thanks so much, and we'll see you out there on the board.